in these interesting economic times, our neighbors have seen a significant drop-off in foot traffic. They've seen a drop-off in club memberships, in sign-ups for club, as well as for people at different levels of tiers within the clubs. And we've seen a reverse. We've seen increase in foot traffic, we've seen increase in sign-up of club membership, and we've seen increase in interest of accounts across the country wanting to carry our wines, because now biodynamics and organics is actually filling a consumer need, whereas before it was something that was sort of reserved for the hippie crunchy granolas. Because biodynamics is so labor intensive in the vineyard, and because it's based on cumulative knowledge of the vine health, the individual health of each vine over years, we actually have a full-time vineyard crew who are with us all year round. And because of their special skill, we do give them full benefits, insurance, health insurance, 401k. They get all the benefits that the regular winery workers get, because they're an extremely important part of us being able to deliver on what we've started out.
Thank you.
We have no pesticides or chemicals as part of our budget, and because our health, the health of our vines has increased so dramatically, we have less issues and less problems to deal with in the vineyard, so there is an offset in cost. Proactive vineyard management actually reduces the kind of band-aid costs that you have to apply later. I don't know that anyone's quantified any health benefits from drinking biodynamic organic wine, but certainly as far as the people here who live and work around these vineyards, being able to walk through the vineyards and not be worried about what's being sprayed, the air that we're breathing, and clearly the effect that it has on the natural predators, our hawks, our owls, the bees, and the coho, and not knowing that we're not polluting the creek, at least for our portion of it, I think there are significant health benefits.
Yeah, I think
as part of our commitment to biodynamics, we've committed to moving away from monoculture. So we actually took out a block of great producing old vines in Zinfandel, an acre, to put in an acre garden. We have 135 beds, spread with beds, where we grow produce for local restaurants and retailers, as well as for the farm-to-table dinners that we put on here at Quivira for our club members and consumers, where everything at the dinner comes from our estate, is grown in the garden. Of our 130 beds, we have donated 50 of those beds to 10 local restaurants. They include Bovolo, the Dry Creek Kitchen, Charcuterie, as well as retailers like the Windsor Greengrocer and Sheldon's. They are going to have 5 beds each, where they'll tell us what to grow. We'll grow it for them. We'll provide the seed and the labor. We'll also provide the delivery twice a week for an entire year, so April 1st, 2009 till next year. And in return, they are going to donate money, $500 each for those 5 beds for the year, to the Northern Sonoma County Healthcare Foundation. It's part of a challenge grant that we're working on. Our proprietor, Pete Kite, on behalf of Quivira, donated $2 million to the Northern Sonoma Healthcare Foundation to help with low-income and rural community issues regarding healthcare, including things like getting local doctors onto computerized systems so that they can interface with local hospitals and pass records around more easily. So he's donated $2 million, and the challenge to the Healthcare Foundation is to raise $3 million as part of the challenge. So our contribution of our produce is part of that effort.
Yeah, so some of the very wasteful areas in winemaking is maintenance of wooden barrels. You know, if a barrel is empty for more than a couple of months, the staves can shrink and it'll leak, which obviously. It's not a good thing. So what's commonly done is you just take your barrels and you stick a hose in it, fill it with water, and it slowly leaks out, fill it with water again, it slowly leaks out, and about the 4th or 5th time you filled it with water, it will take up, and swell and become tight. But clearly you've now just wasted God knows how much water to store that one volume of wine. You can see along the hillside here a couple of people are burning their prunings. We don't burn anything, mulch it or compost it. As far as the farming side of the property, there is nothing that's leaving here as a waste product. It all gets utilized. You know, irrigation is obviously one of the largest water uses in any type of farming. But through a lot of our practices in the vineyard, through clean cultivation and regular tillage during the dry seasons, we can get our water or our irrigation needs down to just about nothing. Part of what we're trying to achieve, you know, we're trying to grow great wine. If we were just simply commodity farmers selling grapes to the local co-op, I would be actively trying to push a lot more yield per surface area. But since we're not selling grapes, we're selling wine, quality is really paramount. You know, you can only push a vineyard so far before you start getting serious diminishing returns on the quality of wine. So I'm also yielding, you know, half of what some, you know, pure just grape growers might be shooting for. In some cases, even less than half of, you know, what are considered normal yields. And because of that, the demands of the vine for irrigation are less as well. The worst things I see happening is still the over-reliance on herbicides instead of cultivation for weed control. It's just wrong on so many levels. You're screwing up the whole web of life in the soil, so you're mucking about with the soil microbes and mycorrhizal fungus, and once you start screwing with those populations, then the plant is no longer getting minerals in a digestible form. You end up with plants that then have, you know, deficiencies, and once you have deficiencies in an imbalanced immune system of the plant, that just starts calling in pests and disease. So you really create all the sort of fear-based rationales for conventional farming actually come true once you start, you know, breaking that sort of natural balance. So, you know, I would love to see more people just eliminating herbicides and just getting out there and actually with a hoe. That would be a nice first step.
Is that
There's always some unintended consequence of creating more herbicide-resistant weeds that become more noxious. And then, I know that you know, the stories about Roundup breaking down within 3 days of application is just nonsense. I mean, independent studies have found it's still active and toxic to earthworms 200 days later. That's a better part of the year you've just killed off one of the most beneficial critters that you have in your soil.
Into the creek to create pockets of deeper water, the deeper pools behind them, where the sandy bottom could catch, which is of course vital for the spawning of the fish, and also to create some undulations in the creek, because that breaks the water. You can imagine in the old days the creeks were viewed as a nuisance by the farmers, so they basically wanted to channelize them, make them as deep as possible so that they wouldn't flood, and get the water off the property as quickly as possible. What happened, however, was that they went so deep and fast that the fish couldn't get up during the winter when there's a lot of water. So this is the last part of the creek restoration, which we're going to hopefully be getting to this coming year.
Since we're on the topic, you said earlier that this was the first time in 3 years, or have I got the facts wrong? That
this is the first time in 30 years that our portion of Wine Creek, this is a tributary called Wine Creek, this is the first time in 30 years that it dried up. Up further into the hills there were still pools of water, so some of the coho and steelhead survived, but the ones that had spawned in our stretch of the creek obviously didn't survive. We go down that ways for quite a while and then up